The information provided on Dr. Tom Roselle Live by Dr. Tom Roselle, DC, interview guests, show co-hosts, or substitute hosts is not intended or implied to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. It is for general information purposes only. Information from this broadcast should not replace the appropriate consultation and examination process by a licensed physician. Always consult your own physician prior to changing any current medical directive or prescription.
Dr. Tom Roselle Live, right now, on 105.9 FM and AM 630 WMAL.
Welcome to Dr. Tom Roselle Live. This is Dr. Tom Roselle. Indeed, I'm live in studio. It's beautiful outside, but I'm here for you. Give me a call, 888-630-9625. That's 888-630-9625. Love to talk to you on any subject that you have in mind. Perhaps you've had a problem and, you've done what you can do and you haven't come up with anything that works. Well, here's an opportunity. Let's see if we can figure it out from a natural point of view. You know what that means? Without drugs and surgery. Let's see if there's another way of taking a look at things. As often as I do, I want to remind you that the body has a why things happen. You just have to dig deep enough and go far back as you possibly can to find out the why behind it. And the whys are always either an injury pattern that occurs to the body, a biochemical imbalance, an insult, things you eat you shouldn't, things you need more of, you don't get enough of, the electrical fields that we're all surrounded by, pollutions, additives, the increased xenoestrogenics in the body, and those are due to all those things that surround us. And then emotion, stress. The body doesn't know the difference, right, between something that you actually have happened to you or things that you're insulted by chemically or things that you think about emotionally. The outcome is the same. What was it, Henry Ford that said, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you're right. Well, that's how the body works. That's exactly what takes place over a period of time. We're going to talk about several things today that are very interesting. I'd love to take your phone calls, 888-630-9625. And I also want to invite you, for those of you who have not had the opportunity, Roselle Center for Healing has an amazing website. There's so much there for you to find out about. If you go into the site, you're going to see several videos, and they're there. They're set up for you to learn from. It's a listing of lecture series that are free to you. You're always invited. And the opportunity for you to learn is the Roselle Center's absolutely primary goal and, opportunity to move forward in healthcare. So get in there. You're going to see different videos. Take the opportunity to do that. You're going to see programs that are scheduled. They go out almost a full year. If you don't see anything there that you like, well, call the office. Call them at 703-698-7117. That's 703-698-7117. And say, hey, it's not all there. Send it to me. There's an opportunity there for you to get a courtesy newsletter. And there's always something great on it. Go to Facebook.com and, log in and put yourself there, and they'll link you up. I'm going to talk to you about some things that I got very excited about this week. And it's important that you understand what the manipulation is that goes on in the marketplace. Now, remember, you have to make sure that you do diligence in figuring out what's true and what's not true. Anytime you hear somebody talking, whether it's on the radio, whether it's on television, whether you read in the newspaper, whatever, you have to figure it out. And I want you to understand that you always have to ask the question, who wrote it? Or who's saying it, why they're reporting it, what do they got to gain by it? And then the final thing that really lets you know what's going on is who stroked the check, who paid for it. At the end of the day, that's the deal. So we're going to do a little bit of that today because there's some things out there that make me very excited, particularly when, not only the big pharma, as you've heard me use the term, and, the white-collar doctor deities that sit out there. But when the big bosses get their hands slapped, it comes back and it says, I've been doing what I'm supposed to be doing and telling you the things I'm supposed to be telling you, and here's justification. Well, there's one that just came out and says FDA suffers major legal defeat in federal court. We're going to talk about that today. Yep, they got their hands slapped. Pretty good. And I want you to know what that's all about. So we're going to talk about the FDA and what happened, because it's important. Having said that, news clip, it's what, allergy season, right? A lot of you have been suffering and really hurting lately. You're sneezing and you're coughing and you're hacking and all that stuff. And they want you to think that there's a pill for all of that, And most of these medications are called anticholinergic drugs. And guess what happens when you take all this nose dope and all this other stuff that suppresses? And by the way, the medications themselves, including things like Benadryl and Demerol and Dynatap and Dramamine and Paxil, why they use this stuff across the board to try to balance the symptoms of these antihistamines that they give you. I don't know why, but they do. But what they're finding when they use all this stuff in combination and so forth, a study that has just recently been published, and by the way, if you go to the Life Extensions magazine, you'll find a lot of this stuff there, and it talks about what happens to your brain. And it actually is shrinking your brain. All these antihistaminics, all these anticholinergic drugs and so forth shrink your brain. They make you dumber than some people think that they are already, and that's not okay, because you're not. You're really not. It's just sometimes you're subject to all the stuff that goes around. So, these things are sold over the counter. You don't need a prescription for them, and then they keep you up. So, from allergies to insomnia, there's a pill for about everything that exists. And they come with huge, huge side effects. And what you need to do, there's a great website. It's called drugs.com. And if you go to drugs.com and there's a side effect tab that you hit it, then you can list all the medications that you're taking and hit the button and see what the compounded side effects are of some of these things. And do yourself a favor. Don't think that it happens to somebody else and not you. Because it does happen to you. It happens to all of us. You happen to be one of those people that they're doing the studies on, the risk levels, right? So when you see something like that, don't put your head in the sand. And then take inventory. Take inventory of your body and find out, am I suffering from any of these things since I took this medication? Since I started it, any of these things happening, like I can't think anymore, or I'm having word finding abilities, or my body hurts all over the place, or I'm having problems breathing, or my bowels are irritated, and oh my God, my urine has changed, because there's so many different side effects, and I want you to be aware of them. I want you to do your homework. I want you to go out there and get it done, because my job is to make you aware. Your job is to see if I'm wrong. And unfortunately, in so many of these cases, I am not wrong. Unfortunately, I'm very right. Let's talk a little bit about major sufferers, and what happens when you're told to do certain things. Then finally the worm comes around and you get to say, oh, my God, they were telling me a lie. This was not true. Yeah, well, what are we talking about? FDA suffers major legal setback. And what's this all about? Well, the FDA is the federal organization, the Federal Drug Administration, that strictly regulates, what drug makers are permitted to say about anything. They're supposedly the watchdog. They can't say something that isn't so. Well, until lately, what was said was limited to what the FDA allowed. But a recent federal court decisions actually over a period of time involving the FDA, ruled against speech prohibition. See, you got to go back to the first statement I made. It's what the FDA allowed. It was the FDA behind it. And then when you go in and you take a look who makes up the FDA, you get a little nervous because many of them are huge stakeholders in a lot of the different drug companies. And go check them out. This is true. The latest victory, if you will, the banner that was raised over the FDA's censorship occurred when a maker of a prescription drug, fish oil, sued the FDA to make a health claim about fish oil's potential to reduce cardiovascular risk. So here's what happened. The FDA insisted it was illegal for this fish oil drug manufacturer to state a coronary disease prevention claim until the FDA said it could do that. So if the FDA said it couldn't do that, then guess what happens? They said that it that they were out of business, or they couldn't get it done, or they couldn't make this claim, or, you put the tag on it. So here's what the situation is. Why would the FDA tell you that fish oils could reduce cardiovascular disease if they're also giving the blessing to drug companies who are making drugs called statins and other blood thinners and so forth that they want you to take? Why would they compare that? Wouldn't they be taking money out of somebody's pocket who happens to be sitting on the board of directors and other important positions within the FDA? Now, if you don't believe me, please check it out. And I don't want you to believe me. I want you to check it out. I want you to go do your work. Go get it done. Fish oils, by the way, have long been known to lower something called triglycerides. And we're going to talk about triglycerides extensively today in the second half of the program. Now, the FDA doesn't dispute that, in fact, it works. What the FDA questions is whether persistently elevated triglyceride levels increase the risk of heart attack. Interesting, right? Okay, we're going to get into that later on today. We're going to tell you exactly what the risk factors are and what happens. And by the way, this stuff is so documented. It's crazy. You can go to any website, go to Life Extension magazines. They've got all kinds of, I like them and I hate them at the same time because they're still in bed with the drug companies. And you take a look who their board of directors are and so forth. But they actually come up with some very decent articles, but you got to read between the lines sometimes to get this. But in this particular situation, and remember, outfits like Life Extension magazines are there to sell you something. So but you go into their research and it's really decent sometimes, and sometimes they use it to their own advantage. But, here's, what's gone. The science behind heart disease and triglycerides has to be looked at because together with, the FDA's archaic position on this data, this stimulated the federal court's decision relative to how they came down. And he said, and I want you to go in and I want you to check this out. But at the end of the day, what happened and what I want you to know about is the FDA compared fish oils to blackmail and jury tampering. This is like crazy, right? This is like, what? And if you don't say what right now, then you're not paying attention to me. The FDA contended it reserved the right to bring criminal charges against this fish oil manufacturer based solely on truthful, non-misleading information that the company sought to convey to doctors. Now, I'm reading directly from the summary. In an attempt to persuade the judge, that communicating this off-label use was illegal and not protected by the First Amendment. Not protected. This is their position, right? The FDA analyzed that it is a crime such as blackmail and jury tampering. Thank God the judge did not accept the FDA's analogy. Yeah, it's kind of, what's this, the fox in the hen house? The FDA made a number of other irrelevant arguments seeking to prevent the fish oil company from presenting its actual factual information. This is the kind of garbage, my friends, that is going on all the time. It's constant. You've got to look behind the scenes. Who gives them the right, the omnipotent right, to say that only we can tell you what to put into an ad. Only we can tell you how to manipulate it. It goes with almost everything that is posted. Read the information carefully and do your homework. We're going to get into triglycerides. We're going to get into blood fats. We're going to get into brain function. When we come back, we're coming up to a break. That's why I'm here. That's why I make an effort every week to make sure that I'm here and we repost this stuff. Don't go away. You're listening to Dr. Tom Roselle. Welcome back, everybody. Dr. Tom Roselle here. You're listening to Dr. Tom Roselle Live. Indeed, I'm in studio. I'd love to take your phone calls on any subject you have in mind today. We have a whole bunch of things that I want to touch bases on. But call me, 888-630-9625. That's 888-630-9625. Let's talk about it and see if we can find out what the underlying problems are. By the way, I want you to go to rosellecare.com. That's ROSELLECARE, rosellecare.com, and check out that website. It is amazing. Why am I bringing it up? Because it was just recently done and added to, and all those things. But anyway, also go to drtomroselle.com. That's DRTOMROSELLE.com, and you'll find a lot of educational material there as well. It's really impressive And why do we do that? We do it for you. We do it because you can go in there and you can check it out and you can learn, and you don't have to do anything except do that. I mean, we don't even, from Dr. Tom Roselle website, we don't grab your name or anything else unless you put it in the little box, say, send me more stuff. And, Roselle Center is the same thing. We don't grab anything off. So, like a lot of rollers do, we don't do that. 888-630-9625, talking about things that are interesting in the news today and things that you really need to know a whole lot more about. And, as I said earlier in the first part of the program, it's a really sad situation when you listen to people that you think have your best interest at heart, and it turns out that they have either been directly kind of sidestepping things, manipulating the playing field to their own advantage. Well, you got, today's world, you have to scrutinize virtually everything that you hear, because media being what it is, regardless of the type of media, it's a constant effort to get you to go into your pocket and buy something or try something or do something or whatever it is, right? So it's like metformin, which is a drug that is used to bring down blood sugar levels. And if you go into and you really start searching side effects of metformin and so forth, you're going to see a lot of things that are not okay. But now they're coming out with metformin inhibits pancreatic cancer progression. Well, yeah, maybe, but what are the percentages really that it inhibits it once it's started, or does it prevent it from starting? What's the deal there? I mean, there's a lot of other things that will work that way. I would encourage you to read in between the lines. When you see something like that, when you see any drug supposedly mentioned in any article, ask the question, who is propagating that? Because you really want to know. You want to know what the story is. I think that you'll find that if you really do your homework and you go into kind of hard-to-find websites, you're going to find that some of these drugs have side effects that you don't want to have anything to do with. There's tons of data out there. It's really tough sometimes keeping it all in place and trying to figure out how to work this into a matrix that work for you. Well, do the work. Start reading. There's little things out there. Start educating yourself. You don't have to spend a lot of time doing it, but you got to spend some time doing it. Don't be the laboratory rat. Don't allow you to be the one that they're doing it to. It's there's articles out there. High-rise residents have higher risk of cardiac death. Okay, and that was a study that was released by the Canadian Medical Association. And, why is that? I mean, it was quite an impressive study when you go through and you see 8,216 people who had cardiac arrest in private residence, were treated by, their emergency number responders, and 3.8% survived to be discharged from the hospital. Of those 5,998, 73% people living below the third floor, and the rest of them were above that. And they came up with this analysis, and, why? Is it because, they're out of shape and they decided one day that they were going to go up the staircase and they had a heart attack because they weren't in shape anyway? There's a whole lot more that you have to, so it's not living above the third floor that's the issue. It's what was the condition and the triggering mechanisms that were there that may have, in these people, suddenly aggravated their situation. Don't know. What were the electrical wirings like around that area? What was, it goes on. My brain is one of these people that I like to pick at things, and I kind of, want to know what the underlying back door is on so much of the stuff. It doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. There's an article that was out there, and they talk about, cognitive dysfunction associated with vitamin E deficiency. Well, vitamin E is an antioxidant, and it's great for all kinds of things. And the succinate form of vitamin E works for cardiovascular problems. It was done by, the original work was done many years ago by two medical physicians by the name of Shute, S-H-U-T-E, out of Canada, by the way. And they found that the succinate form of vitamin E was good. So now you'll go out and you'll buy vitamin E, but it's not any kind of vitamin E, and it was a certain application. But now they're going to cognitive dysfunction and patterns and so forth. Find out what that really means. Look at vitamin E. Is it what? What does it do? What does it transport? How does it protect tissue? What are all those things that are involved? I know I'm giving you a lot to think about, but that's my job. I'm supposed to do that. But when we come back after the break, we're going to talk about triglycerides and the sudden pulling of a test that we've used in our practice forever. It's called the VAP test. It's no longer there. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Dr. Tom Roselle Live continues now on 105.9 FM and AM 630 WMAL.
Welcome back, everybody. Dr. Tom Roselle here. You're listening to Dr. Tom Roselle Live in studio. 888-630-9625. That's 888-630-9625. Love to take your calls on any subject. I'm talking about a lot of different things today and different things that are in front of us and so forth. And we'll probably stop beating up on, those people who manufacture drugs for a while, and at least for about 5 minutes. I don't know. We'll see if we can get back to it in a little bit. But listen, I want you to know something. You want to increase your days here on the planet? Well, start drinking some green tea. And I'm not going to tell you which one to buy. Just make sure it's organic. But there's more and more and more studies coming out that says that green tea will protect you from all kinds of degenerative diseases and cognitive dysfunction and keep your hormones balanced and so forth. And I mean, it's across the globe. I mean, we're finally getting it here in this country. But green tea, has been shown to significantly decrease the risk of diabetes and stroke and depression and balance your blood sugars out and get your cholesterol the way it's supposed to be and so forth. And I mean, really go out and check it out. It helps battle age-related disorders. Why am I telling you that? I'm not selling you green tea. I don't care. If you're not going to buy it from me. I just want you to go understand that you can help yourself with simple things. How much green tea? Nice cup of strong tea, maybe 3 to 4 times a day. Sit and enjoy it. There are many different types of green tea, but make sure it's green tea and doesn't have other junk in it. But it helps with cognitive, stress and other types of oxidative damage, and it protects your DNA. It protects that genome. You've heard us talk about the epigenetic patterns repetitively now for a long time. And that means that your environment has a huge influence on the expression of your genes, how they actually end up showing different types of conditions. You can be predisposed genetically because your great-grandfather, Bill had X, Y, and Z, but, you don't end up with it. Why is that? Well, you have a different lifestyle. You live differently. And the longer that you go and don't stimulate that junk DNA or that suppressive DNA, the longer the chances, or the better the chances are that you're not going to get it at all. So, hey, the deal's this. Nutrition doesn't start with taking a pill. Nutrition starts with what you do for yourself and how you handle things yourself. And the exercise that you get and the changes that you make. We know that green tea lowers cardiovascular disease. It helps prevent, degenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and so forth. The studies are huge and the research is there. Do it. Find it. It's amazing what's out there. All I can do is try to get you to understand that you can do a whole lot of things on your own to make a huge difference. Eating fish reduces Alzheimer's risk, right? Well, the thing of it is you better eat some, the fish that's out there, kind of swimming around by itself, not the farm-raised stuff that they feed all kinds of junk to, because then you can increase your risk of cancer. Yeah, I said that, cancer. But, even, the American Medical Association came up with data that said, oh my God, yeah, people need that fat. And remember, we're going to talk a little bit about fat today before it's over. 888-630-9625. Diane, how can I help you?
Hi. I was wondering, I have neuromas in my feet, one in each foot, pretty good-sized ones, due to foot trauma. Had them now for, one of them for almost 6 years, the other for about 4 years. And I have had, they've injected steroids into my feet. They've given me the topical pain patches. And I'm just wondering if there's something more homeopathic that I can do to help shrink these neuromas, because they have caused RLS in my legs, which obviously affects my sleep, my fatigue levels. And I understand until the neuromas are, as long as they're there, I'll have this new lifestyle.
So let me tell you something, okay? The neuromas didn't show up just because, life decided to pick on you. What happened was that your feet, with the trauma and so forth, could not heal because the mechanics of your foot were never normalized after the trauma. So until the mechanics, muscle firing, fascia involvement, bone placement, and so forth is normalized to a normal functional capacity, the nerves that are being irritated, that are forming the neuromas up by the metatarsal arch, generally that's where they are located, are going to be continued to be irritated. And you can inject them, you can go in and do surgery, you can do a lot of things, but guess what happens? Now you've got side effects of all that stuff, but you're going to get them back simply because the mechanics of the foot have not stabilized. So here's what I would tell you to do, that we tell all of our patients to do, is we get them treated. You have to fix the biomechanics of the foot, making sure that all the muscles are working the way they're supposed to. You have to make sure that the foot is supported in a way that you have normal gait pattern. And those muscles, by the way, start not just in the foot. Some of them do, but a lot of them start at the knee. Some of them start reacting from the low back all the way through. So you fix those. One of the things that you can do is, by the way, if you wear heels of any kind, you're never going to get rid of them. You got to get off of them, even minimally for a while, to allow them to heal.
I don't wear heels and have orthotics.
Okay. Are they hard or are they soft orthotics?
I actually have. I have two sets. I wouldn't say. Well, one is kind of a plastic.
Okay, that's a hard orthotic.
Okay, well then they're both hard.
Okay, so what happens is you're restricting the motion of the foot, and so you're never going to get a normal biomechanical placement of the foot because that's a cast, and a cast is going to prevent the muscles from working the way they're supposed to. It's going to stop the normal facilitation of your walking and your gait pattern. So
even if they were made specifically,
doesn't matter. We use orthotics in the practice, but they're meant, unless somebody is if they're extremely overweight and they're constantly breaking their foot down. But even still, you want orthotics that will balance where the arch is actually falling and breaking down and allow the rest of the foot to work biomechanically neutral. And so you deal with that. You've got to work the fascia out. You've got to make sure that the talus and the calcaneal bone, the calcaneus is your heel bone, and then the long bones from that, they're in normal placement, that they're being held together properly. You have huge amounts of this broadband, almost like saran wrap fiber that goes around the foot to hold things together. So you have to find out exactly where it's coming from. If you do that, then it'll begin to heal. But until those bones are aligned properly, that the arch is restored normally and biomechanically normally, you're going to constantly irritate those nerve roots, and those little neuromas that are there they're going to stay there no matter what. There's no homeopathic application. There's a lot of things that we use, proteolytic enzymes and so forth, to decrease the inflammatory response. Homeopathic such as tremolo arnica, or even in some situations belladonna, because it works temporarily, but that's not something that you need to use ongoingly. Dr. Harlan,
I've been happy with I stopped the steroids, and I've actually really reduced the use of their lidocaine patches.
Good. Listen, why don't you do this? Go to our website and send Dr. Harlan Browning a note and let him talk to you. He does a lot of sports injury work, as we all do. But, he has the capacity to be able to see you. Knowing what we can do, there's no reason you should suffer with it. Give him a call or send him a note and see what can be done. But, Diana, I really appreciate your call. There's a lot that can be done. 888-630-9625. That's 888-630-9625. Talking about a lot of different things. There's a test called the VAP test. And the VAP test is a test that takes all your cholesterols and your fats and breaks them down into the good guys and the bad guys, okay? Now, when you traditionally do a test for lipids, which are your fats, your cholesterols, okay, you have cholesterol, you have triglyceride, you have something called HDL, and you have something called LDL. Those are the basic ones that they run. And, that group of tests was designed by the pharmaceutical industry to determine whether or not you needed a statin. Now, what is a statin? A statin is a chemical that decreases your cholesterol level in the body, because what they're trying to tell you is that cholesterol is what causes heart disease to occur. The truth is that that's a lie. Okay? There was many articles have been published. One, that I love to talk about, New England Journal of Medicine, that says that their conclusion, without getting the entire article, was that you got to treat 100 guys for 5 years with a statin to prevent one heart attack. That's how well it works. So if that's the case, what is the problem? The problem is inflammation, which we've talked about and is the subject of a different program. But here's the deal. You've got to make sure that you understand what these things do. Cholesterols are necessary in the body. Cholesterols allow your nerves to work, your hormones to balance, your brain to function normally, and so forth. They're very protective in many situations. Now, the cholesterols are broken down into what the drug companies want you to believe is good guys and bad guys. Good guys are the HDLs, and these are actually something called lipoproteins. And the LDLs are also fractionated and so forth. And so there's the good ones and the bad ones. So you can have really, really high HDLs, and your doctor says, oh, you're in great shape. But the question still has to be asked, are these the really good protective ones, or are they ones that, they're there, but they're not so protective? You can have lower HDLs, but are they made up of the really good protective ones or the not so good protective ones? Same thing with the LDLs. The LDLs, are broken down. These are the bad guys, right? They're broken down in the ones that are really, really bad and are going to plug you up overnight. Not so much, but that's, metaphorically. Or they're, are they the ones that aren't so bad and you could go on forever without any problems? So you got to know what that is. The VAP test was the one that did that. Those are the ones that broke it down into the different subfractions, and you knew whether or not you were at risk or not at risk. And so suddenly, behind the scenes, the VAP test disappears. Okay? It goes away. Why does it go away? Well, interestingly enough, the VAP test, because it was so effective, and, they'd go into their docs and say, well, why do I need this medication? Well, the VAP test, as I said to you, is one of my favorite tests, and I used to use it and continue to use it forever. I have 40 years of practice, and it finally came out 20 years ago, and we were able to. So, but what I found out, and I was, I wasn't shocked because this is the stuff that is out there all the time. They closed the doors and they said the adverse changes in the regulatory environment. Now, listen to what I'm saying. Regulatory environment, increased pressure from commercial insurance payers, and continued compression of profit margins. Okay, that's the reason that they said that they pulled the VAP test. That's what I'm talking about. Who's behind the scene? Who's writing the check? So their margins are shrinking, and it costs them more money to run the test. At the end of the day, okay, you say, all right, it costs a lot of money to do it. But at the end of the day, if the VAP test told you that high cholesterol wasn't so bad, your knee-jerk reaction is, I ain't taking the statin or the aspirin. Guess who loses money then? Considering that, as I've said many times before, aspirin, $27 billion industry just for Bayer. So who wrote the test? The loss of the VAP test, as far as I'm concerned, left a hole in diagnostic capacity. There's too much going on behind the scenes, my friend, but there's some other diagnostics now that have suddenly shown up that may be able to substitute if you understand nutritional protocols, if you understand how to look at things differently. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. Amar, how can I help you?
Yes, Dr. Roselle, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Okay. I have a problem with both my thumbnails being split and the fingertips being inflamed, and I've had it for going on over a year, and I've been to dermatologists and GP, and nobody's been able to tell me why or fix it.
What do you do for a living?
Security guard.
Okay. So can be a couple things. Now, in Chinese medicine, there are things called acupuncture channels, and there are primary 12 of them, and they're all interconnected, and they're actually 24 because they're split the redundant one side to the other. There's one that ends on the thumbs. It's the lung. It's the lung meridian. And if there's any irritation within the lung itself, then the nails will crack and split or deform or change. That's one of the things that could be happening. The large intestine, which, by the way, starts on your index finger and combines it together. There's a central point that connects them into the web of your hand. If you heard the term positive, negative, yin and yang, and in Chinese medicine, the lung is yin, internal, dense, survival. The yang, which is large intestine, is external and expressive. They work together. So if the gut is bad, then it's going to have an effect on tissues that are controlled by the lung. Okay, so it'll have an effect on it, and you can see one of the symptoms can be cracking. The other thing that you have to look at is your body absorbing proteins. Is your body absorbing calcium as well? So those are another piece of the puzzle. The other thing is that you have a nerve root from your neck, the fifth nerve root. It goes to your thumb, and it goes to half of your index finger. So you have to look at all of those things. My guess, if it just showed up all the time and there has been no injury pattern, and you haven't experienced any numbness or tingling in your arms or your neck or your shoulders or any neck pain, then it's probably due to a problem between the intestinal tract, the colon, and the lung that may have been there now for a long period of time, but suddenly now is manifesting. So you need to get to somebody who understands that. And, whether it's, the nutrition department in my practice or an acupuncturist in my practice, or somebody who does our work, but they can help you. That's reversible. It's not just a simple thing of doing this. But if you know your gut is bad, or you've had some problems with your intestinal system and bloating and distension and so forth, start eliminating things like, and I'm going to give you my mantra: sugar, sodas, coffee, black teas, fast food, fried foods, alcohol, gluten, additives, preservatives, dairy products, GMOs, and so forth. Get that stuff out of there. Your brain just said, now what do I eat? A lot of proteins, tons of vegetables, things of that nature, and see if it doesn't begin to make a change in how that shows up. If we can help you, let us know. Call one of the doctors at the Roselle Center for Healing, 703-698-7117, and, hit the nutrition department or see one of the acupuncturists. It can make a huge difference. I promise you that can be turned around, but you got to find out what's causing it, because if you don't, you're stuck with it, and actually can start affecting other parts of your body as well. Coming up to a break, we'll be right back after some very important messages.
105.9 FM and AM 630 WMAL.
Welcome back, everybody. Dr. Tom Roselle here. You've been listening to Dr. Tom Roselle live, as you do every Sunday, 12 o'clock on Eastern Seaboard, and you do the math and subtract where you're at, and you'll know what time to pay attention to us. Make sure you tell all your friends about us, and when we can help you, you let us know that, too, because we're easily reachable. Go to drtomroselle.com. Send us a note. Roselle Center for Healing Doctors are also very, very reachable, as they say. Sophia, I will take your call. How can I help you?
Oh, hi, yes. You mentioned the VAP being hard to get. Boy, I can tell you that. You can't get it off. But how about the NMR, the Nancy Mary Robert, those 3 initial blood tests, which I think preceded the VAP? How about that one?
It's not a bad test. It's not as complete. It will do some. It's done generally in this area by Quest Laboratories, so you can ask your doctor for it. It will give you a lot more than the standard testing. I don't particularly. I have my own reasons, but Quest is not one of my favorite laboratories.
Well, what test would you recommend? You said you wouldn't. I know you have very little time in lieu of the VAP. Yeah. Well, you can do that test. It will give you more than the regular test, but just doing some genetic testing markers like the MTHFR gene test, that will give you some of the markers that would initiate. For example, it's about folic acid conversion. Folic acid has to be converted to folate in the body, and if you know that you're converting it, then you're transporting B12. If you're transporting B12, your homocysteine level is going to be lower, and your chances of plaquing with a lower inflammatory response in the body is going to be, you're going to put that off. You're not going to be able to plaque as easily. There's an omega-3 whole blood test that also will give you some information, and it's one that is, if it's combined, the EPAs, the omega-3s, and DHEA, you'll see different risk levels, and they seem to be quite prognostic. The information that's out there, I've been looking like crazy to try to find different tests, to use other than, we do things just diagnostic with tongue and eyes and hands and so forth, and we can really tell. If you look at your ears, and there's a heavy crease in the ears that's not done by heavy earrings, that tells you that you have an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. Those lines are called Frank lines, and they are a predictor of cardiovascular problems. The bottom line is you got to know how liver metabolism is working in your body. You have to know how the intestinal system is working. But any of the genetic maps, any of the genetic tests are significant in predicting
problems down the line if you don't do the things that you should be doing. But we use coronary C-reactive proteins, homocysteine levels, fibrinogen levels, things of that nature. But these other tests, the MTHFR conversion genetic maps, the ones that can show you there's other tests that are out there that will show you the oxidized breakdowns of certain patterns, the LDLPs, the LDL or the LPIRs and so forth. These are subfractions as well. So if you can get your doctor to do that, and that's the problem. Most of the physicians now that really don't understand the map. But the omega-3 whole blood test is a really good one, in my opinion, done with MTHFR and some of the other things that we just talked about that can make a huge difference. Sophia, thank you. I really appreciate it. You can send me a note, and I'll continue this with you. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time left, and I want to cover a couple of the things before we do get off the air. I hope that helps a little bit. There's so much to know. There's so little time to know it all in. And, I read as much as I can all the time. I'm constantly on different websites. I'm looking at, things that are coming up. I use my divining rod to ask the question, what are they trying to get from this? Who did the study? And if it goes back to somebody who's going to end up making quadbillions of dollars off of, what they're telling you, then my first knee-jerk reaction, that's my problem, probably not yours, but it's when it's my problem, I want to make sure that you have the information to be able to deal with it. So remember something, we didn't get into triglycerides as much as I wanted to, and we'll probably do that another time, but triglycerides are a type of fat. And what I tell patients is that that fat is like milkshake to your blood. So you want to make sure you keep it down, and it's done with diet and exercise. It's liver function, liver metabolism. We'll talk more about that over the weeks to come. We haven't dropped this subject. We're coming up to the end of the program. Unfortunately, I love you all. See you next week. Bye.